Hello, everybody. My name is Mitt Joyner, and I am the president of the National Association of Social Workers in the United States. I am also the president of the North America region of the International Federation of Social Workers. I want to welcome you today and welcome all the social workers to World Social Work Day. Thank you for your service. Social workers are needed throughout the world, and now more than ever, we must come up to our task of making sure that the arc of justice bends towards liberation for all. So, International Federation of Social Workers term this year that we will be using is Ubuntu. I am because we are. Ubuntu. I am because we are. So when we think of social work, we think about why we came into the profession and why we want to make this country, the world, much better. Now, I know that you are aware of all of the instances of injustice that go on in your own communities, go on in your own nation, and happen around the world. So I'm going to speak for a moment that last May, we witnessed while we were all shuttered in due to the COVID virus that happened to shutter in everyone throughout the world. Ubuntu. I am because we are, right? There was no way to stop the virus going to any land. And unfortunately, people tried to coin the virus and give it terms with certain countries. But we all know that a virus goes throughout the world. It's no border with water. It doesn't stay within one country. So we were all impacted by COVID, really for the US since last March 15th. But what happened in the US is something very unique. We had two murders. One was of Ahmaud Arbery, who was jogging in his hometown in Georgia, and vigilantes shot him. And then we also learned of the death of a young woman who worked in the helping profession, but she was shot while sleeping at home because the police officers came in with their guns and started shooting. Really and truly, they were not supposed to be in that home. And then we witnessed in March a horrific murder by a police officer. Mr. George Floyd died as we witnessed a police officer on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. And over 1.5 million people around the globe took to the streets in peaceful protests to say that we cannot allow these atrocities to happen anymore. And here we are a year later, almost celebrating all three of those. Definitely Breonna Taylor has been murdered, has been occurred over a year. And we found out that none of the police officers will be charged for that murder. We do have the individuals arrested for Ahmaud Arbery. We're waiting to see what justice says about that. And we do know that soon the trial starts for George Floyd. But the question we must all ask is, why were all of these people African American or Black, as we say in the US? Well, since 1614, we have not looked at race at all. In fact, it is my hypothesis that race is the human stain that holds us all back throughout the world. Race. We do not talk about our racial differences, about our culture, about our strengths, about what makes us different. We bottle it up through covert and overt acts of racism. Well, social workers, you know enough is enough. COVID will not allow us to turn the switch back to the way things were. We must progress. We must understand those areas that keep us so different, but yet we're all made up the same if you remove our epidermis, that top layer of our skin. So I say with all of that, Ubuntu. I am because we are. And it's important for social workers now more than ever to go back into their communities, to talk to individuals about what makes them different, about where they see their community going, and how we can liberate people so that they're able to navigate all of the systems in a fair and just manner. And that is what social workers do. Our code of ethics binds us all as social workers to work on oppression and to alleviate racism wherever it exists. In the US, you probably also heard of an election where untruths were told and people decided who they wanted to vote for. Obviously, and thankfully, those truths brought the election to the Biden administration. However, those who voted for the opposite candidate were disgruntled and they started spreading falsehoods. And they went on Twitter and Facebook and began to say that the election was stolen. Time and time again in the US, we recounted those votes, and it came out the same way. Then people were still disgruntled, and they believed that the cancel culture, as they call it, made up all of these things, and that they were not going to allow the certification of the ballot in the United States. Now that happens twice. It happens at a time when we really go through our college, electoral college, where they certify each state, and they held that in December. And again, it was affirmed that President Biden won the election. But then on January the 6th, which generally is a time where it's just a perfunctory thing where you just kind of go in and Congress states that the Electoral College held and the vote then goes to Joe Biden. But something happened on January the 6th in the United States, which teetered our democracy. And to be quite honest, it's still teetering. It hasn't stopped. We had an insurrection, and our prior president was one of the main individuals that called people to Washington, D.C., told people to watch what was happening, and it did. Insurrectionists took over our Capitol. Over 7 police officers died, as well as a person who was joining the insurrectionists. We were watching in horror, as I know you were, at whether or not democracy would stand on January the 6th. And it did. And then the next week, we actually had another impeachment of the prior president of the United States, but that failed to be voted on in the Senate. But we have now a twice impeached president with Congress letting us down to do what was right and just. But then the next week, on January the 20th, we did swear in President Biden and the first African American vice president and the first African American female vice president. And I should not say African American. She is Black because her mother comes from South Asia and her father from Jamaica, which makes her Black. but she wasn't born in America, or her parents were not born in America. Anyhow, what we actually witnessed, that the insurrectionists were mostly white individuals who had linkings to the Proud Boys, and which really kind of linked to white supremacists. And what we saw was, when George Floyd died, we saw diverse people walking through the streets, not only of America, but I'm sure of your country, yelling and screaming and rooting that Black Lives Matter. And that didn't mean that other lives didn't matter. It meant that here in the United States, Blacks are treated differently than their other counterparts, and that's Black and brown people. And so we know that we have a system that does not work. And we know that part of the reason why that system perpetuates is because we fail to have the conversation about the human stain of racism. And it's something that I think that social workers all over must have those conversations within their communities. Why is brown and Black people, or why are brown and Black people treated differently? And when we find that and look at that and learn that through history, we haven't learned about the contributions of brown and Black people. Here in the US, they are the main reasons why the United States exists. It exists off of their free labor, the labor of the slaves, the knowledge of our Native American indigenous people, the ability to do agriculture from our Latino brothers and sisters, and the scientific mind of our Asian and Pacific Islanders. And together, if white, Black, and red, and yellow, if we all work together, our country would be great. Because as what we all learn, the more water you pour into a tub, it rises. And everything rises. Not just half of the tub rises, everything rises. Well, that's what we have to begin to think about as it relates to race. So I urge you on World Social Work Day to serve as a leader of having meaningful, difficult conversations, and making sure that you yourself understand, and you're not practicing covert racism. Look at who you hang with on Saturdays and Sundays. If you hang with only people that have the same epidermis color as yours, you're not dealing with diversity, inclusion, equity, or belonging. You know, think about this for a minute. Why on Sunday, when people go to church, why is that the day when it's probably the most racist day around the globe? Why do we pray differently? Why are there Black Anglican churches and Black Protestant churches and Black Catholic churches? Why are there white Catholic churches and white Anglo churches? You know, why is our community continuing to destroy itself with this human stain? I know that stain can be eradicated as a social worker. I know that if I treat all people with dignity and respect, I know if I help all people access systems so that they can actually achieve their goals or receive their goods and services, I know it can be better. You know, systems are made up of people. They're not made up. They're not these things that are so rigid that you can't change them. You know, think about it. Would you rather fight with brown and Black people through the rest of your life? Or would you rather being able to see how you can work together? Social workers, we understand human behavior in the social environment. It is a course that we all have kind of studied. We understand cultural awarenesses and cultural differences. We know about policies and how they have to get adjusted. We have the skills to do the research that gives us the data that shows us that all of these disparities that we have are made. Disparities only exist because people do not have access. And people do not have access because it's based on who they know. And based on who they know, it's generally the dominant group that receives services. And we're seeing that now in the US as it relates to the COVID vaccine. There was a lot of propaganda that talked about the fact that brown and black people didn't really want to get the vaccine. But in reality, brown and black people find it very hard to get the vaccine. The systems that they are using, going onto the computer, not really going to really look at those who are affected the most, that they'll get in line first. We're seeing friends, family, people who are connected. That's who's getting the vaccine first in the United States. Why? Because we know people will live longer as they get the vaccine. And if we spread the falsehoods that brown and black people didn't really want to get the vaccine, then we can justify in our policies and we can justify through our research. No, it wasn't racism. It was just that they didn't really want to do that. So it's important for social workers to keep the data, to go into the communities and ask, do you want to be able to get the vaccine? And when you hit your brown and black people and they say yes, to be able then to talk with your powers to be say, yes, they do. In our community, they do. Don't let them put down false data. You see, falsehoods are what's destroying the world. I believe in social media. I love the computer, but we fail to look at primary research and look at primary data anymore. We just get on the YouTube channel or we get on Twitter and whatever is said, we spread that lie until people begin to believe it. Now, I know that lies can destroy people. I've watched that here in the US over the last 4 years. Our president was not one to be a truth teller. He told lies over and over again. He even told lies about the lies that he told. But people bought into that. They bought into his rhetoric. They believed that his power, his ability, because he was connected, would give them everything that they want. And he came and he started to really talk about brown and black people. Yeah, I'll help them if they do it my way. Well, we all know in social work that our job is not to have people do the things that we want them to do. They all become Stepford wives or Stepford people if we do. Our job is to help people learn how to navigate the system so that they're able to do it themselves. Here in the United States, we talk about our social workers abolitionists. And as a social work leader, I say, yes, we are abolitionists. We should be working ourselves out of a job. The people that come to see us for whatever reasons, we should be helping them learn how to do things for themselves, to make their own decisions. And yes, it would be a grand and glorious day. The day that we could all wake up and say there's no need for social work because everyone, every community person, every individual knows how to access services for themselves. Wouldn't that be a great utopia? So what I say to you on this World Social Work Day, Ubuntu, I am because we are. I am is your community, I, the community. Is it going to be a racist community because we allow individuals in our community to perpetuate things that we know that are not true? Is the I am because we are where there's hate? Is it because our communities are so hateful and our families are so hateful that our world becomes so hateful? Is the Ubuntu, there has to be the other side of it and we have to be honest? Is it giving up on people? Is it giving up on society? I firmly believe the answer is no. Because the reason I came into the social work, and I asked all of you to think about, why did you come into this profession? What did you want to change? And I can probably say that 90% of you wanted to make this a better society, make it a more equitable society, make it so that all people felt safe, that everyone had an education, and that people had the tools and the knowledge and the education to find jobs and to live in peaceful coexistence with one another. And so I am because we are, I am because I believe that in my individual self tells me that this can be a much better world. But it's going to take all of us, the we, the community, the nation, all of us around the globe to obtain Ubuntu. So with that said, I wish you a happy World Social Work Day. I ask you to remember why you came into this profession. I want you to think about how you make racial equity at the center of everything you do. Are people able to have access? Can they get to the table? Does everybody in the room look just like you? How do you service those that do not look like you? Are you making sure that the LGBTQ community is involved? Those who have different abilities, are they at the table? Are men and women at the table? Are people who have different economic incomes at the table? Are those who live in environments that are oppressed, are they at the table? Because if they're all at the table, if they all have an equitable voice, then we will build a better community, a better nation, and a better world. So Ubuntu. Thank you so much.